Hello again. What I'm going to talk about in this video is how I began to develop my awareness of spirit and spirit's presence in my life began to develop over the years, and how in the process of that I've been protected from some quite serious accidents by spirit and led to understand how actively involved spirit can be in a person's life. Now my awareness of spirit goes right the way back to being a child. My grandmother, on my mother's side, passed away when I was 6 months of age, so I never really knew her, other than obviously as a babe in arms, which I don't remember consciously. But from as soon as I was aware enough to think about such things, I've had a sense of her presence around me, almost like being a guardian angel, and I sense her now as I record this, and since that time other family members have passed and friends, and I tend to sense them working with me, as well as my spirit guides and the source, whatever term you want to put to that, God, spirit, also working with me. But from the earliest times I've had a sense of my grandmother's presence with me, being that she was the first that I became aware of who had crossed over, and with that awareness I had that ongoing sense of her presence. And then of course I've had the sense of, for want of a better expression, because I tend not to use this so much now, but in the early days when I was young I used to think of the higher power as God. That was a word I would use. I'm more comfortable with using the term spirit these days. So I've had a sense of spirit, and I've had a sense of my grandmother with me, and this stayed with me throughout my life. And I've always had, from the earliest days, an interest in psychic ability and psychic powers, and maybe some of this was encouraged by the fact that way back in the 60s, before it was popular in the UK, I used to read Marvel and DC comics, and I had at one time thousands of them, a collection of, and of course the characters in these comics had special powers and abilities and things like that, and I guess that kind of encouraged me to be interested in these kind of subjects. And I also felt, when I've looked back over the years, that in many ways they instilled a sense of wanting to help make the world a better place. Because if you think about it, whether it's Superman or Batman or Iron Man or the X-Men, these characters, they effectively seek to give of themselves and make the world a better place. And I felt that indirectly they were training me, and I think spirit had a hand in this. They were some of my best teachers, those Marvel and DC comics, in lots of ways. And so I feel they had an influence both in my view of the world and an understanding of what's right and wrong and things like that, but also the sense of the ability to have other powers, that there is there are other realms of existence, and so that was quite a significant influence on me. Then about the mid-1970s I was leaving an English class at school one day, and I had under my arm a pile of books, and my English teacher said, "Kieran, what have you got there?" And I showed him, and they were books on paranormal phenomena. And he said, "Oh, I didn't know you were interested in things like that." And he told me that he was too, and he invited me to come back after class to do something that I now know is called a Zener card test, in which there are 25 cards in a pack, each bearing five cards with 5 different designs: a square, a circle, triangle, a wavy line and a star. And the way the experiment works is one person with the back of the cards facing the other will look at each card through the pack in sequence, and as they focus on the image on the card, it's the job of the other person to try and read their mind to sense what the image is accurately. And it seems, as a result of doing these tests, my English teacher told me I was scoring significantly higher than chance on a regular basis. So that further encouraged my interest in these subjects. Then we moved to the 1980s, and I was cycling to work one day when a truck came to overtake me. It was a flatbed truck with scaffolding poles on the back, but the guy that had loaded them hadn't secured them properly, so the scaffolding hung over, if you can see this example, over the side of the truck. And as he went to overtake me, it looked like, I remember talking to one of the people afterwards in the traffic coming in the opposite direction that kindly pulled over to try and help. It looked like, from their perspective, that the scaffolding hit me in the back of the head and knocked me into the road, and I went head over heels landed fortunately safely. My bike was crushed, but I survived. From my perspective, it felt entirely different. It felt as I was cycling along that somebody grabbed me by my jacket at the back and lifted me through the air, head over heels, and I landed safely on the floor. So what it looked like to other people was entirely different to how it felt like with me. As I say, I flew through the air, head over heels, but I landed fine. In fact, I picked myself up and I ran down the road after the truck because he hadn't pulled over, and I managed to, shouting in the other cars, I guess flashing their lights, managed to make him stop. I heard, it was reported on the news within a day or so, or three, roughly, of that time, somebody else in the same county was involved in an almost identical accident and they were killed. And that really underscored to me just how fortunate I was. And I had the sense that my guardian angels had picked me up and pulled me through the air, to avoid a serious injury. Then a few years later, also in the 1980s, I was attending a seminar, a week-long spiritual festival, if you like, 8 days long, at a place called Camber Sands. The organisers had hired, because it was just outside the holiday season, the whole of the holiday park, and loads of families had come in from all around the UK and elsewhere to attend this seminar, this festival. At the end of the festival, the last day, or the morning after the last day, Britain was hit by what is now called the October Hurricane of 1987. And I happened to be staying in a mobile home on this holiday park at the part of the UK that took the brunt of the hurricane force winds. And in the early hours of the morning, the wind hit the mobile home that I was in with extreme force. But I just want to back up before I tell you that, because I was woken up just before that happened, in a start, just suddenly snapped out of my sleep, and I looked up above me. As I did, I opened my eyes and I saw floating above me two beings that fluctuated between being pulsating energy and winged humanoid forms. And they would be winged humanoid, pulsating energy, winged humanoid, and my initial reaction was to make a fist. I was startled. I thought, what the hell is this? And I made a fist. And then within a few seconds they disappeared. But I felt guided to make my way out of the small box room that only had a very small window in it, to get dressed and go into the lounge, which I did. The winds continued to buffet the mobile home, and then suddenly, with the impact that was just like a train hitting it, the whole mobile home was picked up in the early hours of the morning with me in it, thrown through the air. It bounced off my car that I had parked next to it, crushed my car, smashed through a wall, knocked the wall down, must have spun around somehow because the end of the adjoining mobile home was taken or damaged, either taken off partially or damaged significantly with the impact. Yet I found myself floating. At one moment I was in the mobile home, the next moment I found myself floating down backwards into some soft wet grass, unscathed, other than the fact when I was taken to hospital afterwards for a check over, I had a small cut on my ankle that required one stitch. The mobile home by this time, the hurricane force winds were picking it up, throwing it through the air and smashing it to pieces. But I walked away fine. On a couple of other occasions, I've been driving my car when two other drivers, at different occasions, once in Salisbury, once in Romsey, they've driven into me and they've totaled my car. They've smashed it, written off irreparable, and I've had to get new cars on both occasions. Actually, one was a rental car. Sorry, one was my own car. One was a rental car that was written off. And but on both occasions, I walked away from it totally unscathed. So those are actually, there have been other situations, but those are a few that I would feel are relevant to share with you. And in each of these situations, I've had the sense that I've been divinely protected. Now, I'm under no illusions that I could be foolhardy or get myself in situations, it's like talks about in the Bible, doesn't it? Jesus says, don't test God. I wouldn't knowingly place myself in a dangerous situation, but it seems that in these instances I was protected. So I guess for whatever reason it wasn't my time to cross, but there are more things for me to do yet before it's my time to cross, and when it is, no doubt, whichever way it happens, I will cross at the right time. So along with the sense of spirit actively around me, the psychic testing and the being protected, it seems to me quite clearly by spirit guides, I then began to pursue my own, if you like, relationship with spirit more actively. So I'd learned to, as a hypnotherapist, go into hypnosis, go into trance, and I would use these opportunities to go to what I've described in other videos as a place I call the shamanic realm, where I would meet my spirit guides, have conversations with them, and ask them to give me evidence to validate that it wasn't wishful thinking or pure imagination, but that I was genuinely having a conversation with them. And as I've talked about in other videos, they did that. They began to tell me things that were going to happen in the world news in advance of them happening. Then another significant stage of my personal development was, or psychic development was, I attended a course in Brighton that was run by the Silva Method, S-I-L-V-A, the Silva Method organisation. This course was based on the work developed by Jose Silva, who, amongst other things, as well as developing a form of, if you like, personal development, comes psychotherapy technique that became very, very popular. He also developed a technique by which people could learn to access their psychic ability to one degree or another. And I remember on this workshop in Brighton, on the last day of the course, we focused on what I guess we could call it remote viewing. And we were split up into groups of 3 people, and in these groups we were each given, once we were guided into trance, guided into hypnosis, we were given by another group member the name of a person that they knew, and the name could be just, the first name, John, or it might be John Smith or something like that, and the location. The location could be as vague as Canada. And it was our job then to use these coordinates, John Smith in Canada, the John Smith that the person was referring to, in Canada, and we had to focus on them and see if we could get a sense of their state of health, and then feed back to the person who knew the person in question any information that we sensed, and it was their job to validate if we were accurate, or to tell us, if we weren't. And I remember the first person I was given, I come from Bournemouth, so I don't know anybody in Brighton. The first name I was given was of a woman, I think, and I went into trance, and in my mind, when I was asked to focus on her, I got a sense that she had a bad cold, or cold-like symptoms, and the person affirmed that this was accurate. It wasn't actually a cold, she had an allergy, and at that time the allergy was causing her nose to run and her eyes to stream. They then gave me the name of a second person. It was the first time I'd ever done anything like that. So that was quite encouraging that, they give me a name, I tune into that person, and I pretty much get the symptomology right. Then they gave me the name of another person, which was a guy. I can't remember, there was an element in one or the other. I can't remember whether it was this guy or the woman that I talked about. I also said they carried stress in the tummy area. And that I thought it was an ulcer, it resulted in an ulcer. They confirmed that that was the case, but it was actually irritable bowel syndrome. So I got the right area, got the right subject, and I slightly misinterpreted what the cause of it was. So then I was asked to focus on the guy, and I said, I remember hearing in my mind, Spirit saying to me, he's got a smoker's cough. And I remember my analytical mind got in the way, and it said, don't say smoker's cough, Karen, that's too specific, just say cough. So I said to the woman that gave me the details, I said, I sense this person has a really significant cough. She said, yes, I can confirm he has a very significant cough. It's a smoker's cough. So we stopped that exercise, broke for tea break, and that was the first time ever in real time I've been asked to tune into a situation and gather some information about the people concerned. And I mean, it wasn't a great, big deal, like compared to doing psychic readings these days, but the information was pretty much on target. So we finished the tea break, and I was then assigned to a different group, and I remember this woman gave me the name of somebody in Spain. And I guess my psychic radar, as a result of 2 pretty accurate, if you like, very mini readings in the previous exercise, by this time it must have opened some door, because my psychic radar just seemed to go pow. And they gave me the first name, I think it was, of this guy in Spain. And in my mind I said, I sense he's got a problem with his hearing, a problem with his lungs, a problem with his heart and a problem with one of his legs. And the woman said to me, I can confirm he's deaf in one ear, he has emphysema, he had a triple heart bypass just recently, and unfortunately the poor chap, as well as everything else that he was struggling with, he'd fallen over and he'd injured one of his legs. So after the first, if you like, 2 dry runs that were pretty close, by the 3rd time, it was absolutely astounding. And the level of confidence that gave me about my ability to alter my state of consciousness, tune into spirit, tune into a spirit guide, and bring through really accurate information was absolutely amazing and uplifting. And for those of you that are interested, we also spent time sending, as best we could, healing to the individuals concerned. So we didn't just use them to focus on their state of health in a unthinking way. Part of the exercise was, in whichever way we could, to tune into spirit and send some kind of supporting energy to them. So these experiences led me to a point where then I was invited to go and see 1 or 2 other psychics and mediums, and every time I went to them, they would say things like to him. I remember one, he's very well known in the Bournemouth area, platform medium, been giving readings to spiritualist churches for ages. I sat down in front of him and he said to me with his lovely Irish accent, said, I don't know why you've come to me for a reading, you could give yourself a reading. Spirit told me 15 minutes before you arrived, you could do what I do. And other psychics again were giving me the same kind of message in various ways. So based on these readings, my Zener card tests, the Silver Method tests, the information that Spirit was giving to me as I was, if you like, meeting them in the spirit realm, and they were telling me things that were coming up in the world news, I then began to become more confident about it and start to make videos called, back then, 6 years ago, when I posted them on MySpace, the Hypnotic Prophet videos. I've taken them down now, and this new video series will touch on some of those subjects. And I felt Spirit was giving me a message to share with other people. And as a result of all of the prior information and experiences I had, I felt confident to do so. And a nice guy by the name of Ian Jones, who runs the Spirit Guides website, kindly invited me to be interviewed by him. And as I've talked about recently in one of the other videos I recorded in recent days, in those 4 interviews we talked about some of the prophetic information that Spirit gave me, and I gave examples for the radio interviews. And between interviews I sent him some emails with some predictions which all came true. And as a result of all of this, that then led me to working full-time as a psychic medium. I still do hypnotherapy and counselling, but Spirit has seemed to shift the direction of my work about 6 years ago, very, very much in the direction of working as a psychic and a medium. So for those of you that are interested, that's basically how I got to where I got to now. So from a very early age, then with the sense of Spirit around me, the Zener card test, the sense of being protected from very serious accidents, the messages from the other psychics, one after the other. You could be doing this, and one said, there's going to come a point, your line of work, your vocation, your career is suddenly going to shift in a much more spiritual direction. At the time, I was working primarily as a hypnotherapist, and then exactly as she predicted, that's exactly what happened. Spirit took me in a different direction, and then coupled that with the Silver Method training that I did, that gave me that real-time experience of being able to perceive information from Spirit and share it accurately with people. That's what led me to working now as a psychic medium. And I sense what Spirit's done is they're now at the point of bringing all of this together, because along with doing the psychic readings and giving people information that's helpful for them in their day-to-day lives and bringing through departed loved ones and spirit guides in ways that are helpful, a little over a week ago, Spirit encouraged me to return after about 5 or 6 years to making videos again, to talk about subjects that I feel they're inspiring me to talk about, to make this information available to other people, so that those who watch can be aware that there is a spirit realm there, they can interact with us. If those of you that are developing psychically, maybe you can learn something from the process that I've been led through, so that as perhaps you maybe have some parallel or similar experiences, you can understand that these are the kind of things that happen when Spirit is calling somebody, waking somebody up and preparing to work with them. And also, you know, I find it really inspiring when I look back over my life, particularly, you know, we all go through challenging times, and sometimes it can be really inspiring when you're going through a difficult patch to think, hang on a minute, you know, in many ways I shouldn't be making this video now. There are a number of occasions when I should have died, really, but I'm here. So it's not my time yet, and that in itself is an incredible encouragement to work with Spirit as best I can, and to share the knowledge of Spirit's presence with as many people as I can who are open and willing to listen to videos like this, and then in their own lives embrace a relationship with Spirit as best they can. So I'll be making more videos talking about psychic experiences, talking about messages from Spirit, but this is kind of just to give you an overview of how from a very early age I've sensed the presence of Spirit, and in a gradual way for a while, and then pow, you know, suddenly the accelerated as I was protected from those accidents and the silver method training and the messages from the mediums, and suddenly, you know, them giving me information of world news before it happened. There came a point that Spirit was preparing to begin to work with me in a more meaningful way, and when that happened, it's like everything started to accelerate. So I hope you find this interesting, and again, I'll be doing some more videos in the not too distant future, and thank you once again for watching this video. Bye bye for now.